her poem, Dreams Before Waking, Adrienne Rich writes, "What would it mean to live in a city whose people were changing each other's despair into hope? You yourself must change it. What would it feel like to know your country was changing? You yourself must change it. Though your life felt arduous, new, and unmapped and strange, what would it mean to stand on the first page of the end of despair?" As we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me your hearts and minds in prayer? Oh God, may the words of our mouths and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Today is a pivotal day in the life of our congregation. We have worked towards this day for months, and really for years, as our church has undertaken a series of visioning processes, all of which have led us to this moment, the kickoff of the congregational phase of our deeply rooted capital campaign, and a week from tomorrow, the kickoff of the public phase of that same campaign.
One of the things I have enjoyed the most in working on this campaign so far is hearing from the rest of the campaign team about their perceptions of our church. It's completely clear that many see this community as family. As Kyle Mahana said in one of our meetings, we are a doing church and not just a talking church. We are a church that makes you think and where questions are welcomed. We are a welcoming church. We are a church where we take care of each other while also opening our arms wide. We all have our stories about this church. For me, this community and this building welcomed my family 15 years ago.
And for me, this community and this building welcomed my family 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when Violet wasn't even a twinkle in our eye yet, and Chloe wasn't even 2. In fact, the weekend that I interviewed, Chloe took her first steps tottering down this aisle.
For me, this community and this building is where I watched Paul Kordick build gingerbread houses with my then 5-year-olds, being a big kid for them and teaching them how to be a big kid for others.
And for me, this community and this building, well, this is where my little kids are loved by our big kids, by our teenagers, and by our campus ministry students. There is no happier a day in my children's lives when the big kids come to our house to decorate our Christmas tree.
For me, this community and this building have been the launching pad for adult and youth mission trips that allowed us to reach into the wider world. Trips that in turn have reached back into this building and this community as trip members bring back new knowledge, new energy, and inspiration for moving forward.
And really, we have been that since our very beginning, having been founded by abolitionists. We've been clear about our progressive theology and the embrace of social justice as the way we live out gospel love. We are a just peace, progressive, LGBTQ, open and affirming congregation planted here in the heart of the University of Illinois campus. And although we don't always get it right, we sure do try, as I like to say. We are worth our words. And in this age of conservative backlash, our church has become a beacon of hope and strength for many people.
For me, this community and this building has been a site of intergenerational community, providing opportunities for fellowship at game nights, Easter breakfasts, church workdays, and more.
Campus ministry Bible study and outings to the corn maze, pub theology, men's breakfast, just for fun breakfast, and this newly forming singles group, which you'll hear more about later in the announcements. It's also a place of connection and inspiration for people. from our longest night service to Ashes to Go and communion on the corner, CUCCers sharing their faith journeys with each other in newcomers group, to Pride Sundays and Star Words on Epiphany, to glow sticks on Christmas Eve and the rousing welcome of Vidor's Toccata that Brian plays for us every Easter morning. This is a place of inspiration.
And it's a foundation for building intergenerational connections that extend beyond this building. From ice cream and shuffleboard with Jean Dew and others at Clark Lindsay, kickball in Sydney, Springside dinners all around the community, to personal outreach through the meal train and the faith community nurse.
For me, sorry, that's you.
It is me. It's 2 in a row.
Yeah, you did.
For me, this community and this building has connected my kids with trusted adults. Adults who are willing to be present for an all-day Planned Parenthood sex education session for our young people. And I'm not kidding. It was 4 2-hour modules back-to-back in one day. Adults who accompanied them on mission trips and bike rides and trips to other churches. Adults who are willing to answer interview questions about their marriages or their gender identity for school projects. Adults who modeled their faith and their questions.
For me, this community and this building have connected young adults with caring and committed folks for decades through campus ministry. Those connections have in turn changed the world. For instance, as a campus ministry student, Krista Betts discerned her call to ministry standing on a ladder at Martha Seif's house, cleaning out her gutters. That's a true story, by the way. Krista is now the director of ministerial assistance for the pension boards of the United Church of Christ, and she oversees charitable distributions of $3 million a year to people who need direct support. Likewise, as a campus ministry student, Mallory Casperson lost her mother to cancer, and then she herself was diagnosed with cancer just a few months later. She ended up leaving her graduate school program to found Lacuna Loft, which is an online nonprofit organization providing online support programs to young adult cancer patients, survivors, and caregivers. Lacuna Loft exists in part because of your ministry to Mallory. Because, church, she spent a lot of time in this building discerning what God was calling her to do in light of that series of life crises.
For me, this community and this building are personal, as it's become community in a new way for my son as part of campus ministry.
And for me, this community and building are personal because it's become family for my children, with people who have stepped in as grandmas and grandpas as David and I have lost parents, and a home away from home for my friends who have been embraced by you every time they step through the doors.
We sing songs and we learn the rhymes about the church not being a building, but the church being the people. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But it doesn't let us off the hook for our building. We need to be good stewards of our building. But more importantly, our building enables our community and enables our mission.
Our building has become a resource for so many other people. Jubilee Cafe celebrated 2 years of service to our community this past week. It serves university students and community members alike, including people who currently have no permanent address. We have 3 AA groups that meet here weekly. In the past, we've had NA groups and ACA groups who have met here. The International Friendship Group has gathered here on Thursday mornings for I don't know how many years, and new this fall, there are 3 English conversation classes that meet in our conference room throughout the week.
This building, in this place, signals our deeply rooted value of being a campus church. We have collectively and repeatedly decided that this is where we want to be and where we want to remain. I always relish our collective enthusiasm to see the students returning each fall. As the parent of college students and as a faculty member on this campus, I share this collective commitment to being a campus church. This building, with its flags, signals our deeply rooted support for equality, inclusion, and justice. Our building is a beacon of hope for many of us, but also for many who have never walked through our doors.
Friends, over the summer, not one, but two different friends who like to keep tabs on our ministry via the miracle of social media, upon hearing that we were doing a capital campaign, handed me checks. They handed me checks. They've never stepped foot in our doors, and they handed me checks. One of those friends, they wrote a check for $1,000 for our capital campaign. He looked at me and said, "Your church is changing the world." And CUCC, believe him, he's right.
We do life-changing ministry out of this space. And we need to take care of our building in order to do all these things, to continue to build community and to continue to do social justice. We aren't the first people who have done this.
100 years ago, our forebears built this building, the sanctuary in which we sit.
The next generation did a capital campaign to add the parlor and the classrooms that we use for Sunday school.
A later campaign added the office space and bathrooms and the elevator.
The most recent capital campaign funded air conditioning, new furnaces, and the asbestos cleanup in the floor and ceiling of our old kitchen. But also the addition of a serving area, the installation of equipment that meets health code requirements for a commercial kitchen. Among other things, this laid the groundwork for Jubilee Cafe to sprout into being.
And that brings us to this moment.
We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Now it is our generation's turn.
Our building is in need of some major TLC and a few minor upgrades, which will enhance our life together.
The project funded by the capital campaign will include roofing, including a new roof for the tower and parlor, and repairs to the roof over the sanctuary.
Masonry work, including brick and mortar repairs, renovation and replacement of the parking lot and the front entry steps, restoration and masonry and lintels around the windows.
Revamping the entire parking lot.
Patching falling plaster and painting the entire sanctuary and other areas which are showing damage.
An overhaul of the guts of our elevator. We can't be welcoming without accessibility.
And installing a projector in the sanctuary and a monitor so the choir can see as well, so that you can see things like videos of roots growing that I show the children during Children's Moment, or so we can all look at pictures of artwork during worship series.
And finally, we're going to update the parlor furnishings to make that space more usable for more things.
We estimate, and this is just an estimate, and we know that estimates change, but we estimate that all of this will cost $500,000, which is a big number, but friends, we think it's doable.
In fact, over the past month, the members of our church in leadership roles have been prayerfully considering what God is calling them to pledge toward the deeply rooted capital campaign. With gratitude and hope for the future, I am honored to announce to you today that we already have pledges in hand totaling $313,302. More than 60%.
We did the math. Jennifer checked it for me. Today's scripture passage reminds us to seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you in exile and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare, you will find your welfare. God invites us to reside fully here and to bloom where God has planted us. Even in the context of exile in Jeremiah's day, God invited the people to plant and nurture and tend gardens of hope. Well, now, Campus Town is not necessarily exile, although Although it certainly feels, for those of us who don't live in this neighborhood, sometimes like we are foreigners in foreign land. No matter, because God pitches God's tent wherever we are, and made in the image of God, we are called to pitch our tents with and among the poor and the marginalized, with and among the lonely and the lost, with and among the forgotten and the unloved.
So next week after worship, we're going to have a launch party in the parlor after worship. There's a campaign video that I hear is really good. I have not seen it yet. You can hear in more detail about the projects that will be funded by the Capital Campaign, and there will be breakfast treats.
Kathy and I also have a song for you. There's been a musical piece written exactly for this campaign.
It's not to be missed.
Not to be missed.
Over the next few weeks, a member of the Capital Campaign team will reach out to each of you individually to set up a meeting to talk about the campaign and your role in it. That person will be prepared to talk about the campaign and to answer questions you might have about it. They'll bring you a pledge card and ask you to make your pledge by the end of October. And then you'll be invited to bring your pledge card to worship on Dedication Day, which is November 3rd, All Saints Sunday.
Now, as we've mentioned, there's also this other aspect to our campaign, and that's the public phase. Janelle Bentz and former CUCCer Michelle Frank are heading up initiatives to reach out to Friends of Jubilee Cafe and former CUCCers, respectively, to invite them to participate. As Jennifer mentioned, we have this campaign video that targets those folks. With the help of Jesse Wallace, the husband of our former office manager, Rachel Wallace, we've made this amazing video that will be posted a week from tomorrow on social media. That, along with special brochures for those different groups, will be available. We invite you to share those.
It is also important to know that we will be engaging in our usual annual stewardship drive at the same time as the Capital Campaign. So as we look to our long-term future with hope, we also need to continue to tend to our immediate plans as embodied in our annual budget. Your pledge card asks you to indicate both of those pledges, your 3-year pledge toward the Capital Campaign and your annual pledge toward next year's budget. I strongly encourage you to prayerfully consider your gift to the campaign so that we can continue to be and to build on our community.
Our community, which is deeply rooted where God has planted us.
In this place.
For a future with hope. Amen.
Amen.